Hello and welcome back to Manga Graveyard. I'm Pascone,
My name's Eddie.
And I'm Jeremy.
and we're back at you again with another canceled manga, baby.
Hey.
A
Eddie?
sad topic, but one that needs to be explored.
Yes, we're here.
Yeah.
We read canceled manga, so you don't have to.
No.
Yes, though.
Anyway, actually, we'll tell you if you should read it or not. Anyway, Eddie, why don't you tell us what we read this week and all that other stuff?
So, last week we decided last time on this we decided which one to read, and I suggested that we read Ippei Goto's Hi-Fi Cluster. Hi-Fi Cluster was actually one of the manga presented in Shonen Jump's Jumpstart series, which is sort of like a serialization event they did where they would launch several series, 3 chapters at a time, and kind of get like a jump start for mangaka. And it featured a few things like it would be featured online on their website and like their online app. Some of them would get official translations to English, so on and so forth.
So, without further ado, let's get into the first chapter of High Five Cluster. So,
Yes.
starts off right out of the gate with introducing the setting. We're in future Tokyo, and apparently there's been a rise in crimes using ability labels, which we quickly find out are little stickers you can slap onto people that allow them to do things like drive and play baseball. Like, there's a wide variety, and you can even see on the main cover there's things like drive, joking, angling, stuff like that. And it seems at first that our sole main character is Peta Jugojo, who is a delivery driver for pizzeria, and he's skipping out on high school to, do delivery driving instead. But we quickly find out that he's actually also delivering stickers, or rather ability labels, illegally, which after a bit of a misdirection with his inability to drive, he runs into let's see, where's his name, Kosaku Kandera, who is, we find out later, is a cop who is trying to track down the source of these illegal deliveries.
Also, isn't Peta isn't he unable to use ability labels for some reason?
Yes.
Oh yes, he is.
Special is he is unable to use labels like normal people.
So kind of like how oh god, what's his name? Deku in My Hero Academia was born without a quirk. He cannot use these ability labels that pretty much have become part of society, like in everyday life. So after running into Kosaku Kandera, he replaces the cop's lunch with a pizza, and they kind of start talking, and he starts grilling Peta about, if he knows anything about this illegal ability label delivery. And after some bullies roll up to bully Peta, as they typically do to our short, young protagonist, he uses that opportunity to escape and get back to his goons that are forcing him to deliver the ability labels. And Kosaku talks to his childhood friend, who we only get to know as, what's her name? Where is it?
Nano?
Nano, yeah, I believe we only know her as Nano. But worst comes to worst, he gets, Peta gets given this very rare, like, Generation 1 sticker that's, like, golden and special, and it's listed as Hi-Fi. And while he's trying to get it set up to deliver, it sticks to his hand and will not come off. So that leads the goons to basically hold him hostage because he's ruined their merchandise. And they use his phone to get Nano involved, and it basically becomes a hostage situation until Kosaku shows up and saves the day. And that's where we get a first glimpse at the ability system beyond just the normal, like, driving or other, like, standard, craftsman, like, stickers.
Yeah, we learn what hi-fis like mean and what they like do and what they represent.
And Kandara has a hi-fi on his prosthetic hand, and he can use his big like
Extendable baton?
yeah, an
It's like an extendable
baton.
baton sword.
But it's like 30 feet long or something?
Yeah, it can get really long, and it can block bullets.
Yes. And so what we find out that hi-fi is they are things that are part of this, what they call a hi-fi cluster, which is the abilities and data of famous historical figures like anyone you could think of who got famous in history, from both myth and real. So like Benjamin Franklin, Tesla.
It seems to be more based off like real famous people than like myth, because
Right.
they have like this whole thing where it's essentially just their collected data in a label that lets you do what they could do.
Right, and so these ability labels are a step above the normal ones, and we find out that Kosaku's hi-fi was based on the famous samurai Sasaki Kojiro, who perfected the Ganryu style or swallow style, where he was to it let him nimbly control in a super long blade, which they called the washing pole. I believe it was an odachi. Eddie, you know a lot about this.
Yeah, Sasaki Kojiro is a very famous samurai whose most famous thing is he used an odachi and he could move it really fast, which is hard because it's long as shit. If you've ever seen anything from Japan and someone's used in a technique called the Tsubame Gaishi, that's his signature thing.
So after we get that kind of like brief backstory on what high five are, we now realize that Peta is carrying a golden high five sticker on his hand that won't come off. And throughout the scuffle in this little hostage situation, Kosaku proves himself to be super badass, and he makes quick work of the goons by deflecting their bullets, and then basically crushing in half with a sword the van that the lead goon tries to run them over with.
He cuts their van in half with a stick.
Yeah.
Yes! It's so dumb!
It's so stupid.
And then the first chapter closes off after, the cops come to clean up that mess, and Kosaku reveals, oh, he's part of a special Unit 6, a bunch of high five users called loaders, who help stop other loader crimes or ability label crimes, and they're kind of like the redheaded stepchild of the police force.
Yeah,
But
no one likes them, but they're there.
Yeah, they basically are like the bottom rung. Also, Kosaku informs Peta that he is going to jail
Yeah,
in the end of the last chapter.
that's how the chapter ends.
And now, since we've gotten kind of through the first chapter, we want to talk about our impressions.
Oh yeah. So I really liked the first chapter,
Oh yeah,
especially
I'm on board as well.
the end where they handcuffed Peta. I was like, yo.
I'm like, are we really getting like? Because I figured, oh well, kid, come with us. We'll show you the ropes. And then no, you're going to jail, Bucko. The action was great. It's really clear to read too. Nothing gets like visually confusing.
There-
Yeah, it wasn't messy and all over the place
Yeah.
like a certain thing we've done on this podcast.
Yeah.
I really liked the art style. There were a few times where it kind of looked like poo, but I do really like the style when it's crisp. Which I think after this first chapter, I stopped seeing poo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
It
started
definitely
getting a lot better.
unpoos.
Yeah.
It definitely
It definitely-
wipes before anything.
It got really consistent after the first chapter in terms of quality. I agree.
Also, I was
Oh, yeah,
surprised
go ahead.
Candera, the cop guy. I was
Yes.
surprised that he was a cop because he didn't look like a cop, and I thought he was
Oh,
gonna
yeah.
be like one of the like a goon or something, like
Like a mafia guy.
still like a main character, but like a bad main like
Bad guy.
yeah.
Like a bounty hunter or something,
Yeah,
like an
something
illegal
like
bounty
that.
hunter, vigilante type stuff. Yeah, they don't make it clear that he's a cop until he says it himself, which is nice.
I'll be honest, and in a bit of contrast, I didn't really like the first chapter all that much.
That's fine. We need contrast.
Yeah, we need someone to cut.
It's not that I thought it was bad, it just didn't really engage me until like the hostage situation at the very end.
What engaged me was the ability system. I was like, I just really like how it's kind of stupid in like a good way.
Yeah.
How it's
That's
like,
what
oh,
caught
let me put
my
on
eye.
let me put on this sticker, and now I can drive.
Like, and
Yeah.
especially in like a futuristic setting, it's ripe for potential.
Yeah, like they like how they specify their inabilities-based society with the labels, and I'm like, you're gonna keep saying that, and it's not gonna get any dumber. But
Oh, can we talk about the funny, like the good slapstick humor, like how the bully's ability was ball control, and he just kicks the helmet 80 feet into the air.
yeah, see, like cool applications like that may let me know that this series was onto something. But it wasn't until I don't know. It wasn't until I saw like the actual like action instead of just Peta getting bullied
Yeah.
that
That's
I.
fair.
But I know we're going off the first chapter now, but I will say the longer the series went on, the more I got into it.
Oh yeah.
That's
Al-
fair, because you're contrasting it to the first chapter, so it's fine.
Also, the first chapter, as well as some chapters later on, they do have some bad writing, I think. Sorry about the dogs. But,
It's okay.
so yeah, there are a few lines, there are just a few times where it's like, oof, that hurt, that line hurt me a lot.
I'm interested to hear, because nothing stuck out to me, but
I
then
would have
again,
to, I didn't,
it's good that we have
Yeah.
different viewpoints, because, you know, this is
I,
things.
I would have to really look for it, because I should have, like, wrote down exactly what it was, but there were just a few times where I just felt like
Okay.
the writing wasn't too up to snuff.
Also, I say my last note really here for the first chapter is they set up an interesting. They already set up an interesting backstory for Kosaku with one panel.
Yeah.
With the whole like that one panel where you see all of like these like special forces looking guys dead, which is someone in a cloak and two swords apologizing to him, and it's something that happened in his past.
Oh, and they also show like his thing deactivating too.
Which is foreshadowing to what the powers are, but unless you like are super amazing at guessing,
Which I was.
which you were, I didn't realize it at the time. But now that I'm looking at the panel right now again, yeah, it's totally
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah, the second I saw those initials, because they don't outright say what like each hi-fi is based off of.
Yeah.
They give like this weird coding initial, which is really cool, but it's so on the nose that some of them are like 4 letters long, and some of them are like 10
So,
broken up to 3 different words.
some are just the actual names, but without the vowels.
Yes. Like how so Kosaku's hi-fi is SSK equals KZR. And he's Ganryu style Kojiro Sasaki's high five, and it's like, oh. So that pretty much covers it for the first chapter. So if we want to maybe move into kind of the major plot points, which will probably be kind of more power discussion, characters.
So,
Oh yeah, go ahead.
after this, Peta actually, he joins, this the Special Unit 6, and they go on and they don't know what his hi-fi is yet, so they go on this mission
With a bank robbery.
it was a bank
Oh wait,
robbery.
don't forget, they bring him back to the headquarters, and they're like, "Hey, no, we're not taking you to jail, kid. I'm just messing with you."
Yeah,
We're
so-
making
Kosaku was messing with him, and they introduce Miri Sanyama, who is basically just like the accountant character for the group. We don't get to see what her hi-fi cluster is,
I
even
don't
if she
think she
has
has
one. They don't mention it, and I was like, I was waiting for them to drop it.
Yeah, they don't
I
mention
think
if
she's
she
just
does or
I
not.
think she's just Kosaku's assistant.
But she's part of it, so maybe they had it planned later, but it canceled.
Also, speaking of her, one other complaint I have is that all women look the same in this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
any
two
of
of
the
them?
actual the
There-
two actual
there's
female
only two.
characters
Well,
that you see in.
there's a third later on that they like
She
save or
doesn't count.
something, but they all look the same. Anyway.
Yeah,
But the males all have really cool character design.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's something that would have been improved given the time. But yeah, no, you're totally right.
Yeah.
So they
So,
go
yeah.
foil a bank robbery, and that's when we learn that Peta's hi-fi is Socrates.
and it's really cool.
It's really
fucking cool.
And every time
Because
they
the
were
basis of it is that he's looking out of society because he's not a member of this label society, just like Socrates. So he's just able to scan people.
Yeah.
He can see through walls, see what ability labels people are using, and even read like emotions with color.
Yeah. And whenever they reveal someone's hi-fi, they have a really cool drawing of like the person that their hi-fi is based off of, like behind them with like glowing red eyes, and it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, like for example, they're like, "Hey, kid, remember how during the hostage situation when you put your hand over your swollen eye, you were able to do something? Try that again." So he does it, and then like his thing kicks on, authenticating gesture, insight. He's like, "I can see."
Each hi-fi
really
needs an authenticating gesture, with Peta's being covering his right eye. Yeah.
And Kosaku's is taking a stance and like slightly unsheathing his blade.
Like an Aida stance.
Yeah. So it was during that part where I started to be really reminded of Blood Blockade Battlefront, because I think Leo's the main character's name in that. He also has an eye ability, and you know, it's a similar kind of like special cop group with abilities doing, you know, thwarting other special people. So
they're super cops.
yeah, so
there's many series like it.
yes, there are many series like it. It reminded me particularly of Blood Blockade Battlefront because of the eye thing with the main character.
And this is a bit of a call forward, but when we meet Kosaku's like rival character to a degree, I was instantly reminded of Psycho-Pass. Because if you look at Kosaku and then look at the main villain, look at Noto, the rival, and then compare it to what the main, like, I forget what they call them in Psycho-Pass, but like the criminals that they use as hunters. If you look at the main guy in Psycho-Pass and the person he had history with and hunts down, they're very similar in appearance to each other, and it's another futuristic setting with like some kind of like criminal system. But in any case, Peta uses his ability to call out the locations of all of the criminals, and Kosaku takes them all at one fell swoop right through the wall.
Yeah. And then
He uses something called, I think, slash spread, where he's able to like stab them all real quick.
It's still stupid.
It's still stupid.
and the preceding chapters after that,
Just more character introductions.
They introduce 2 more characters that are a part of the Special Unit 6. First
Even though there's
is
5 of them.
yeah. The first is Jeremy. I don't know the name, so
It's
tell
all
the
right.
name.
So, Mr. Akusa, who appears to be some kind of like delinquent kind of tough
he's
guy type.
definitely a thug.
He's a thug. He's got big shades. He's got a huge coat with like a puffy collar. He's chewing on like one of those like soda bottle gummies. And he has a big magnum.
It's really cool.
And once you figure out what his power is and what his big boots are, he is basically Jet Set Radio the character.
He has my favorite ability, definitely.
So the way they introduce his power is we find out there are these highway robbers who are like on a group of motorcycles, and they like surround cars on the highway and rob them. And before they start the mission, quote unquote, Peta realizes that Mr. Akusa has like gigantic boots with like spurs on the back, which turn out to actually be a big pair of rollerblades.
So his rollerblades are actually special equipment given to him, just like what's his name's long stick thing.
Oh yeah, Kosaku's super long stick.
And Peta gets special goggles.
Yes.
So I thought that was a really cool point when it's like, here's a bunch of cool tech stuff to help you use your ability.
Yeah, like the idea that they get like government mandated equipment that is custom made to help their ability is super rad. And Pascal, since this is your favorite ability, why don't you go ahead and tell us what it is?
Yeah, so it's Isaac Newton, and he can basically manipulate gravity. And like so he like jumps off a building and just makes himself. Does he make himself go faster or slower?
He like slows his fall down perfectly, so he can kind of like glide to the ground.
Yeah.
And in so he's the one who catches up to the highway gang first, and they get through a tunnel thinking, haha, keep up with us in this tunnel. And then he's like, I'm on the ceiling. And then he goes, fall, and spits out a gravity calculation at them. And then he like basically lands in the middle of them and starts wrecking face.
Yeah, every time he uses his ability, there's a gravity calculation with like what he's doing, and it's pretty cool.
Like he skates on the side of a semi truck that's skidding out of control. He's Jet Set Radio, the character, because he's on rollerblades, and he has sunglasses. He literally does look like he walked out of Jet Set Radio. It's great.
And took a gun with him.
Yeah, he has gun.
Yeah, he's got gun.
And he catches the main guy by landing on top of his motorcycle and like roundhousing him off of it. And Kosaku has to super extend his blade to catch the goon before he falls off the bridge.
It's still dumb.
And after that chapter, oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm just gonna say his extendable cane thing is it looks very unwieldy.
Yeah,
because
it's just really like, hard.
It has just like a handle on the side that he holds it by, and it's like that wouldn't be comfortable to hold it.
But don't worry, he has his prosthetic hand and his ability label, so it's fine. But
anyway.
Yeah, no, his sword has a super weird holster design.
So after we meet, what's his name, Ekida?
Mr. Akusa.
Akusa. We meet my favorite character.
Yeah!
What I think is the coolest ability. And his name is Hecht Okada. And he is lethargic as fuck. But he looks super cool and built. So they go to, like, a club to find some people that stole some, like, military mechs that can use labels.
Robot, like, they're like work construction robots, but the one of them that comes out later is the military one.
Well, yeah, but they're military.
Yeah.
His thing's really cool because, what is it? So instead of being, like, a world-known, popular, person, his ability is based on a really popular Japanese politician. And apparently this politician was able to, like, listen in on on everyone at multiple times. So his brain he's got galaxy brain, basically. Yeah,
the line was like, a genius who was able to decipher 10 people talking at once. And they show it in a panel where he crosses his arms and looks real, like, meditative. And there's, like, 80 speech bubbles in the panel behind him of everyone in the club talking. And he's able to pick out the people they're looking for. And it's Prince Shotoku from the Asuka period.
Yeah. And then later on, okay, so these are the dumbest fucking criminals ever.
Oh yeah.
Because their hideout is literally right behind this bar that they were in the first place.
They literally run out the back door and are in their, like, warehouse.
Lair thing, and they pull out the robots. And then Ekusu shows his cool fighting style, is that his parallel operation, as it's called, can also be used to, like, pilot these flying gauntlets that he's got, like, 20 of. And he equips different labels to all of them of different martial arts styles. And he just has, like, flying fists of death, and it's super cool.
So he stands there in a badass pose while
with his arms crossed,
fucking wreck everything.
And he's so tired all the time because he uses galaxy brain. He uses like 10 brains at the same time, basically. So he's always tired.
And they have to bait him into work with, like, his favorite candy because it gives him energy, apparently. And also, he really likes fighting because when the 10 robots show up and he's ready to use his hands, he's like, "I'm wide awake now." Yeah, also, a funny thing that we see, it's a running joke that we don't get to see much of after this point because there's no more introduction chapters, but they always get, like, some piece of vital information late because they're, like, the bottom dog in the police facility. Like, on the highway chase, they didn't get the info on, like, when they were going to be there until they were basically already there. And here, after taking care of all the, like, work robots, Miri calls and is like, "Oh, by the way, they gave us late info, but one of the other machines is a military machine. Please don't deactivate it."
And then it comes out of the warehouse, and Hecht beats the living shit out of it.
Oh, yeah. Totally wrecks it.
It was cool.
with a super cool like finishing panel where he looks away from the hands beating it up, and it's like all out knockout, and has a fucking crazy ass action panel.
And yeah, so that basically ends the introduction chapters, and then it goes into its last arc for the most part, because the series is only 18 chapters long.
So all of that takes us up to chapter 7, which is where we start to expand more into Kosaku's backstory and what that panel in the first chapter was about. Because it was a massacre that went down in Tokyo Shibuya.
4 years prior.
Yeah, on 6/11, and someone online was like, "I'm gonna repeat the massacre that happened there." So they're standing out in like, what is it? It's that like famous like X crossing,
It's
right?
like
That you always see like a
Shibuya crossing.
Yeah. And
So yeah, go ahead.
so they go there, and the guy who it's not the same guy from 6/11 that did the massacre.
It's a copycat.
Yeah, it's a copycat. And what was his
It
ability?
was like
I have
it
it.
was one of the generals of like
Yeah, it was one of China's three.
Oh, yeah.
So the most powerful general of China's 3 kingdoms in that warring period, it's Ryu Fu, the man who can take on 1,000 opponents. And it's at this point we discover how they list the power rankings of, and this never comes up again, and it's the first time we hear of it, but so they call it a track S, and we find out that from S, A, B, and C, from highest to lowest, is like the power ranking, and they have different tracks based on what type of like historical figure. So for example, Peta's power is an A track, and it's a scholar sector because it's Socrates, and like this other guy who has Ryo Fu, it's a warrior sector, but it's track S.
it's S tier.
So like, oh my god, it's S tier. Mr. Kosaku, how are you gonna stop him? And then Peta finally has the like idea to ask Miri where Sasaki Kojiro or Kosaku's power falls on the label, and it's like, oh, he's track B. So it's like, what? He's gonna use a track B power to take on a track S power?
And he wins the fight. But
Yes. I have to say, there's a really super cool panel at the end of chapter 7 here, where the guy is holding up a fucking bus,
yeah,
and Mr. Kana just starts walking calmly towards him with his blade at the ready.
but yeah, he beats him up, and right when they have him detained, the police like got him cuffed and stuff. Somebody shows up and cuts his fucking arm off.
And his leg, it catches his shin
Oh,
too.
it's his leg too. I see that now too.
Yep.
And it's the actual guy from 6/11, with the 2 swords and the cloak and stuff. And he also
stabs
Miri.
Miri in the
Yeah.
shoulder, but she's fine. Don't worry. Spoiler alert, I guess.
And it turns out to be the Kandara's.
His name is his Kosaku's like rival at this point. So you know what? We'll cover it now. We find out later that he was one of the other people on a special unit who were sent in to like stop something that was going on in the subways, and it turns out he was another member of that same special unit force that Kosaku used to be on.
Oh.
And the reason he's on Special Unit 6 now is because they did it to cover it up, basically, because they couldn't catch this guy, whose name is Soichiro Noto. So after this kind of standoff happens, we get a little more exposition about how since they couldn't catch this guy in the initial incident, they basically dropped Kosaku to the lowest rank or in another place so he wouldn't talk about it and no one would believe him. And that's how he ended up starting Special Unit 6. And it's here they start having a fight, Kosaku and Noto. And we find out that Noto's ability is a direct counter or comparison to Kosaku's. Because it is it not in that chapter? What chapter?
It's Miyamoto Musashi.
Yeah, Miyamoto Musashi, who is in the famous legend, if you want to drop it, Eddie, because you know, you're the one who taught me about this before this.
Yeah.
We read this.
Miyamoto Musashi is actually the swordsman who killed Sasaki Kojiro, and is essentially one of Japan's greatest swordsmen of all time. In Hi-Fi Cluster, as his abilities appear here, Noto uses 2 swords. One, I think, is shorter than the other, which is a good nod to Musashi's actual fighting style. But it doesn't really explain what it does. He's just really good at using swords, I guess.
Yeah, that seems to be all it is. Because he has like a lot of like names. Like he does Battle, 2 Heavens, Terra, and then does a move.
Yeah, so he'll do like Terra and Ether and Wind, and it's like, you're just spouting nonsense and doing anime bullshit.
And it seems like they're kind of even, with Noto having a slight upper hand. Like he's kind of pushing back on Kosaku, but then Mr. Akusa and Hecht show up to assist. But just when they think it's going to turn back into the swing of the protagonist, we meet someone else.
Now, personally, I thought this was a really cool twist because they hinted not so much at this in particular, but at this character before. And they go by the name of Landscape Mole. And the only other time they talk about it is when they reveal that they're actually the one that invented labels.
They just anonymously released them on the internet one day for people to start using, and it completely changed society once they came out.
So, Landscape Mole shows up covered in labels and like high-fives and stuff like that.
Yeah, like Penta tries to read him, and he's just has so many that he can't see it. And also, Landscape Mole has some kind of like noise screen, so he can't read anything either.
Because he's the one who invented it. You can't defeat the creator.
He's also a little kid.
Yeah, he's also like 12.
He's like Peta's like Peta's size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he shows up, he has cool earphones and like weird spiral eyes.
Yeah, he's freaking out.
And he has a great introduction line too. Where he goes, "I'm Landscape Mole, a rough and tumble kid born in these dreary times, here to bring you to disaster." And Kosaku's like, "Oh shit."
And everyone's like, wow, this kid's a fucking loser.
So, turns out that what he's doing is he wants to give everyone high-fives, not just normal ability labels, to create a survival of the fittest society. Standard fare evil villain stuff. Darwinist, only the strongest survive. Yes, that's the law of nature. But that means humans haven't evolved since the beginning of time. That's why he released the high-fives in the first place, as opposed to just the normal labels as well.
Yeah, so he's not happy with how... Because when they release... He's not happy with how people are using labels currently. It's not how he envisioned it.
So he wants to start a revolution. Also, something interesting I'm noting as I'm looking over the panels, in a lot of shots, it almost looks like Penta has like goat eyes to a degree. Because like he has a pupil with like a black band across the middle, and then like one color on top and one like lighter shade below.
Yeah,
sometimes
it's an interesting style.
It looks really good though.
Yeah, I like the author does a really good job sometimes at making things look a little bit rough, but like the shading and line work's always good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sometimes it looks like crude lines just to help like emphasize usually emotion. But then he can snap right back into really good, like the backgrounds are really good.
Except I don't like Noto's nose.
Yeah. It's kind of weird. But it reveals that Noto is working with Landscape Mole, and they like basically see you guys later and do like a villain, exit where they just like whoosh, teleport away.
Yeah. So, from that point on, considering this is about the halfway mark of the series, is Landscape Mole's introduction. From here, it's just basic villain stuff.
Yeah, just like a lot of like
one
build
more
up.
Important character, and that's Mr. Shannon.
Yes.
Yes.
Who is a I guess mercenary cab driver?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like a contract cab driver who works for anyone who has a contract for them.
And their hi-fi is probably the most interesting, like, usage
Oh
one.
yeah, it's definitely like a okay.
Huh. I
So-
never would have thought of it like that.
Yeah, the small-time villain thing that's happening is there's some loader that's coming in on a ship or something, and they go to kidnap that loader to like help their plans.
And,
So as they recognize the taxi, you can, if you want to jump on.
yeah, and Landscape Mole hires Mr. Shannon. I don't know if we said
Yes.
that specifically.
At a arcade where they play like Initial D together.
Yes. So yeah, he hires Mr. Shannon to go ahead and pick up and escort this other loader that they need.
So they obviously have to give Shannon chase because they need to make sure that that other loader doesn't fall into Landscape Mole's hands. And then he turns his cab around and it's got like a Gatling gun in it.
Yeah.
And
It's like
he's
a
got a
James
battle
Bond.
cab.
Yeah.
Yeah,
At,
it's like the Austin Martin.
at first, I thought he was gonna have James Bond as his hi-fi.
But James Bond's not real.
Yeah, but I was like, what else could it be?
Yeah, because he has a fucking bat. Like the wheels spread out, and he could like drive over the other cars, and like there's turrets in the the rear
And
lights.
bombs. So his cart's just like a go-kart from like Crash Team Racing or Mario Kart or something. But his hi-fi turns out to be Ludwig von Beethoven.
Yeah.
And it
And
gives
they-
him the ultimate spatial awareness.
By sound. Because it's like supposed to play off of how the fact that Ludwig was a great musician, even though he was deaf or hard of hearing.
And they also reveal the hi-fi that he has captured, right?
Yes.
Who is a like 6-year-old girl.
And this one's really cool too.
Yeah.
This is great.
Whose hi-fi is Isaac Newton. And we not Isaac
No, no,
Newton.
no.
No. Alfred Nobel. Alfred
Yes.
Nobel. And her power is just to blow shit up.
Yeah, 'cause-
Yeah, because Alfred Nobel was the Swedish inventor of dynamite.
Yeah, who cares about anything else he did? Just blow shit up.
And I think she blow stuff up whenever she cries. Is that what
Uh,
happens?
I think it's when she
yes.
ever like spooked or cries.
Yeah, it's
yes,
something like
'Cause
that.
she's like 6 years old, so of
But,
course.
Is she the one setting off the bombs, or is the cab the one with the bombs? Because she's
No,
asleep
so-
for like the beginning.
So what happens is initially the cab drops like a trail of smoke bombs to like, get them off the trail. But they still, it's like a chapter and a half chase scene before Peta finally catches up on like a bike. And when he reaches in the window, he's like, "Oh, it's a little girl," and her ability is Alfred Nobel.
And
she
Alfred Nobel looks super pissed.
Oh yeah, he's with his red eyes and like side. He has a side profile.
Yeah, it's cool.
The little girl is actually like the most different looking female character there is, and she's cute. So she gets spooked and like cries and like it sends an explosion off in the back of the cab that like gets Peta away from the cab, but then Kosaku jumps in and is like, "Nah, I got this." He does like a quick 1-2 jump and saves her. And
then-
Miri.
and
Oh no,
then
not bad. He saves Miri from a side swipe, not the girl. Landscape Mole gets away with the girl. I forgot. 'Cause
Yeah.
He needs her for his plans.
Yeah, they crash the cab and Landscape Mole takes the girl away, which, if he could do that, what was the point of the delivery? I'll be honest, I feel like either this chapter was the one where it's like, yeah, you're canned, just finish it up.
Yeah, it had
Because
to
everything
be.
just goes so fast.
It had to be something because they introduced basically like the main villain halfway through the runtime, so they had to have known it's coming.
And by this chapter, they already start getting into what his big plan is after he steals the little girl and also tries to kill off Shannon.
Yeah, but they save Mr.
Shannon.
Yeah, Kandara saves Mr. Shannon, and then they're like, "Hey, you want to join us?" And he's like, "Hey, it sounds fun."
He's like, yeah,
Because
that sounds
it's
cool.
revealed like literally a few pages later that Landscape Mole is at the Parliament and he's gonna do stuff at the Parliament.
Yeah,
So
so
they need
he's
to
at
rush
the
over there.
Japanese diet building. They need to get there fast, and Shannon's like, "Oh yeah, I'll bring you there in like 5 minutes." But you gotta let me go, and I'm going to break the law along the way. And they're like, "We
can't
gotta stop the
refuse.
terrorists." So
We've got no choice.
they
so
show up
this
to
is-
the diet building.
This is when, the mangaka must have knew the end was coming because we literally get into like what would have been a big climactic moment in a longer running series in chapter 15 of 18.
Yeah. So essentially, they get to the diet building. Landscape Mole is convinced this child that everyone in there is bad guys, and is just telling her which ones to kill, because he's holding them all hostage because he wants his younger brother back.
He also uses the Force.
Oh no, I think it's his older brother.
No, he's the older brother.
Oh, huh. Yeah. Oh yeah, he uses the Force because apparently one of his ability labels, he just lifts someone up and fucking throws them, they're like with a fizz, like he has a fizz gun in his hand.
Yeah, no, but labels don't make sense anymore.
Yeah,
Not
he literally,
anymore.
since
No,
it's close to the end,
explosion.
he's literally just given free reign to do whatever the fuck he wants.
So they get to the diet building. Outside is Noto, and he's like, "Hey, we gotta settle this."
Noto was left behind as like the guard to make sure no one got in and interrupted the hostage scenario. Also, as Landscape Mole reveals, "Hey, I want my other twin brother back," from like the government, he's revealed that while Landscape Mole was the one that I think he was the one that
released them, but like
he
his
created the
younger
data,
brother-
but his brother, so the Landscape Mole that we know created all the data, but his younger twin brother made the labels themselves.
Yeah. So
And he's like, "Okay, so every 10 minutes, I'm gonna blow one of you up."
starting with whoever looks the most important.
yeah.
That's a good line.
Yes.
Um,
It's a pretty cool wide shot of Noto just sitting on the stairs with a bunch of Slade special ops soldiers. He's like, "I thought you'd come, Kosaku, but let's settle this."
So they fight Ekusa and Hex to help out. Peta saves the kid.
So
He's
yeah,
now
like
outside.
they try to tell Peta to run ahead while they fight Noto, and then Landscape Mole just comes out. I was like, "Oh, don't worry, I already got what I got."
I already got what I wanted, yeehaw, and then it's like, time to kill you all. Some SWAT guys arrive. Landscape Mole teleports over to them to kill them.
Oh,
And then,
no. It's so they start having this big conversation again with Landscape Mole, like, "Yeah, that's what I like about you, but I don't have time to deal with you guys. It's gonna take a while to start mass producing high fives." And he keeps going on about like, "Oh, Kosaku, you're just a little cog in the wheel of society." Blah,
oh yeah,
blah,
that's right,
blah.
I forgot about this part.
And so Kosaku starts reflecting, like he has a big like comeback speech, and then when he's like, that's something a kid would do. You're just a child. You're immature." And then he gets pissed. And he's like, "Don't you patronize me?" And he like unleashes a power, and that's when the SWAT guys roll up. And
But there's also a reveal there that's really cool. Is Landscape Mole breaks Kosaku's prosthetic arm,
oh yeah,
and then it turns out that the prosthetic arm was like was government tech that allowed him to use a hi-fi, and that he's not actually a hi-fi wielder.
yeah, he's not an actual loader. It's the arm that lets him do it.
Which I thought was really cool.
So during this little conflict, that's when Peta runs up to save the girl. But once all the people roll up in trucks and like in mass, she gets spooked again and like blows up everything.
And that defeats Landscape Mole because he got really close to kill them himself, and
Yeah.
then just got blown up, and he's like, "Ugh, I should have seen this coming."
And Kosaku saves Noto from a pillar that was going to crush him, and he's like, "It's over if you die, no matter who you are."
So I'm gonna arrest you instead, yeehaw.
Yeah, and so while Landscape Mole's like, "Oh, lame, I got blown up by my own thing I used as a weapon,"
And
He's
then he
like,
goes,
"Why don't you
"Ha, ha,
quit
ha,"
now?"
and runs away.
That's when he blows up the arm, after Kosaku's about to arrest him. But then Kosaku uses his human arm to fucking deck him in the face.
Yeah.
Whoa, human arm!
And that's the reveal that he wasn't a loader. And he's like, "Isn't that what an ability is? What good is being chosen by an ability if you're the one that ends up getting used by it?" Kosaku's great. Let me just get this right out of the way. I love Kosaku. It's cheesy, but it's good. But Landscape Mole ends up escaping anyway to go run off with his twin.
And then
The last
They wrap
chap-
up the
yeah.
chapter.
the last chapter is a time skip, right?
Yeah, it's just an
Yeah.
epilogue time skip.
because they wrap up the chapter with Noto is arrested, he was apprehended. The little girl was saved. Landscape Mole is saved, and no one knows where he was. But they covered up. They somehow covered up this whole thing in a few days, and everything went back to normal.
Because, canceled.
In the media, the incident was glossed over, and the public wasn't told all the details. But yes, our last epilogue chapter is a short time skip where Peta Jugo Joe, god damn it, that name. Jojo graduates, and he is still working with the Special Unit 6.
He also runs into the
Nano.
Landscape Mole's brother.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he does.
Who just seems to be a normal kid. Like,
Yeah.
he doesn't seem to be evil like his other half.
Yet.
Which is funny because it's a callback to an earlier moment where Peta saves some kids, saves a kid from some bullies, and it turns out, oh, it was Landscape Mole in disguise. It was really obvious, but Peta didn't notice. And then later we see someone who looks to be the same. He's like, oh, it must be his twin.
No, he thought it was just the same guy.
Yeah, he
And
thought
then
it was the
the
same guy.
And
But
the brother's like, Oni-chan, did you do some weird shit while I was in jail? and then
Peta runs
days-
back to the Special Unit 6, and they're like, hey, welcome, you're late though, loser.
yeah,
We got
and
a crime to solve.
they high five, and Shannon's there, and then they all go on a mission,
And then Kosaku has a goatee.
yeah,
Oh yeah, Kosaku has a 5 o'clock shadow goatee now.
and oh yeah, it ends off with them going to fight loaders who have like copies of their abilities.
Oh yeah, they mentioned like the thing they're going to stop is like a copycat team of them. And they have a big line of the group shot of everyone's capable of love and bravery, right? And everyone's like, oh, come on, Kosaku, don't be a dweeb.
Yeah, you dweeb.
Like, dude's getting senile in his old age, and God, how many times are you going to say that? You're a parrot, they can only say one. Like, everyone just, like, jukes on him. And then,
Cool.
I think the funniest one is Shannon, who's like, I'm coming too this time. I wonder if there's a copycat of me, hee hee.
Just wants a death race. But yeah, that is all of Hi-Fi Cluster. Abridged.
So, before we jump into our likes and dislikes, let me turn my AC on, because it's getting hot.
No.
I liked how this was just kind of dumb fun. This manga, I liked it.
Yeah.
There was, as I said, one of my dislikes is just some of the writing was bad. But I had fun reading. I like the art style. I like the abilities.
Art style was great. It's one of the coolest ability systems that I've personally seen or read about, in my opinion at least. A lot of the single shot panels, like for dramatic moments, are really well done. Like they really set the scene well. And a funny one is in chapter 9. There's like all like the main guys we know so far. So Kosaku, Hecht, and Mr. Akusa are like doing a cool guy shot, and like Peta is running into it to like catch up with them. So it's a little funny thing right there.
Because he's a goober.
Because he's a goober.
So at first I wasn't really sold on labels because I'm one of those guys that are like, yeah, but how does that make sense?
Right.
But then as labels stopped making sense, it became more interesting.
Because it's like, here, what crazy abilities can we think of by just slapping historical figures in here, like Beethoven and Alfred Nobel?
Yeah, like once it got to Nobel and it's like, this girl just blows up stuff with her brain. I'm like, you know what? Sense is no longer needed.
It was just a really super cool, fun ride.
And I'm surprised he was able to fit in a whole chapter for an epilogue, basically.
Yeah.
Well, considering how somewhat rushed that like last chapter was,
like 15 through 17.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just comparing it to Zombie Powder. Because like Zombie Powder had like nothing, when this had like a whole chapter for an epilogue.
Yeah. Well, no, Zombie Powder had an epilogue. It just didn't make any sense.
True.
It was like 3 pages.
And it took me all this time to reviewing it again while we were talking. So I realized that Special Unit 6 didn't really have 6 members because Kosaku was just making it and getting it off the ground as we got through the story.
Yeah, it was
essentially.
Though it was kind of cool that it ended up with 6 members.
Yes.
Um,
Nice little bookend. So literally all I have for dislikes is that the plot ramped up in intensity a bit too fast towards the end, but that's literally just a symptom of probably the mangaka knowing it was going to be canceled.
yeah.
And then other than that, my only other dislike was that it was canceled.
Yeah. I mean, that's not fair because that's literally everything we're going over. That's
I know, but like I honestly, outside of like the little bit of a rush towards the end there, I couldn't think of anything that stood out to me that was to be disliked.
I, for one, if this were to keep going, I know I'd be very upset when Kosaku dies.
Oh yeah.
They set up so many death flags for this man. Like he's basically the entire time just Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
He's just Obi-Wan Kenobi.
He is Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like Star Wars, like 5 or whatever. The one right before he dies, the Vader, basically.
Yeah, one of those.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's just Obi-Wan. He's always like, people can do anything. It only takes someone with a good heart. Labels don't mean anything. And it's like, you are setting yourself up to die so hard.
My only like way I could thought of it being improved would literally just, hey, they played their hand too quickly on a few things, and things kind of snowballed out of control in terms of not making sense a little bit, and like jumping from solving small-time crime to saving the parliament from explosions. But that's just because it was short, and you know it's hard to say that could be better when it literally couldn't without more time.
Yeah, it's kind of stuck in this gray area where like, if it went on longer, it would have been better, but it wouldn't have ever gone on longer because it wasn't popular.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't popular because it's short, and it's short because it was unpopular.
And it's
Yeah, it's a weird.
And it's strange to review it because it's like, I have a problem with this, but I know he couldn't do anything because it was getting canceled, and he knew that. Like, I didn't like the fight with Noto was anticlimactic, but
Right.
there's nothing he can do about that. It was
Yeah.
He knew it was going to be canceled, so he just needed that
It's
fight
like-
to happen.
The results for a lot of this aren't great, but the journeys are, and I think that's what makes this really fun to do.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's
Because like a
interesting.
lot of these mangas have like interesting ideas for the most part. It just kind of sucks to see like it nipped at the bud, so to speak.
Mhm.
In which I can agree. I think we all might agree here that this definitely had potential to be something more, given the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. The ability system's stupid.
There's so many historical figures to go through that you can make dumb abilities off
Oh
of.
yeah.
So many.
So many.
I mean, unless there's anything else, I think we have to go for a rating, right?
Yeah.
Unless anyone else has anything to say. All right. So, who wants to start us off with the ratings?
So we covered it a lot when we were like talking about it, but a lot of what happened in this series reminds me, and I think all of us, of a lot of other series,
Oh yeah.
which may have led to its inevitable fate. But it's really hard to also look at this without thinking of other manga that do, or series that in general that just do the same thing. So I probably have to give this somewhere around like a 6. Maybe a 7 for having a character I really, really like.
Yeah,
That's fair.
I'm in the 7 range. I had a lot of fun reading it. And yeah, it's unfortunate that the manga market's just full of manga
That
like
harsh.
this.
And that's one of the others caught on besides this. Objectively, I'd probably also have to give it like a 6.5, a 7. But personally, I think it's a personal 8 out of 10 for me. Seeing as, if you look at it objectively, where it borrows little pieces here and there from other manga in some ways, but it puts them in a unique enough spin that I think it's at least, not necessarily a step above, but not a copycat either. But of course, it's so short.
Also, I don't think the ending's that bad.
Oh yeah,
personally.
no, they
Like,
managed to wrap it up pretty well,
Like,
all things considered.
The fact that it got an epilogue was really nice.
Yeah.
And it was cool that, like, you know, it tells of more, like, fun
Journeys
cop
to
adventures. But Pascone put it really well, is I think it was just really anticlimactic.
yeah.
And that was the
Oh, yeah.
worst of it.
That was probably the worst it got, is how, like, simple everything was after it was solved.
Yeah, because you hit the epilogue chapter and you're like, wait, that's it?
Yeah. But personal enjoyment, 8 out of 10, because I loved reading every part of it, personally.
Yeah. I'd say I would recommend this one. I think it's just dumb fun, and if you go in knowing that, and not expecting it to go longer than 18 chapters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's definitely the big disclaimer. So if you understand it is what it is for what it is, I think you can have a great time with this one.
Yeah, you kind of have to sell this with the disclaimer that it's short, because if you go in thinking it's going to be, like, I guess not longer, but knowing that, like, if words.
Knowing that you won't get everything to see play out how you want it to, and things are gonna, like, ramp up real quick.
Yeah. So without slapping that, like,
Disclaimer on.
yeah, that sell by in a week date, this thing would be a little bit spoiled.
So
Anyway, I think that's
that
it.
covers
That's-
Hi-Fi.
That's Hi-Fi Cluster.
What are we
Alright.
gonna do next week?
We don't know. And
I'm
neither
looking at
do
the list
you.
right now, but
But
that'll be for you to find out.
if
in
you
the next
subscribe,
episode.
hit like, and make sure to ring the bell, you will
God damn
find
it.
out.
You'll find out the same time we do.
Exactly.
Yes.
Thanks for watching.
All right, guys.
This
Have
is
a
Manga
great day.
Graveyard.
Good morning. Oh no!